In today's world, many people will tell you the best way to live your life. They'll say the things you need, the job you should have, and the unrealistic standard of life. However, the way Jesus lived is the way that we should live as his followers. Sometimes it can be very challenging to live that out, and we need to turn to God's word for insight on how to live authentically like Jesus. Jesus' brother James wrote all about it. We can't only be hearers of the word, but we must be doers of the word. So let's take a look at what it means to be an authentic follower of Jesus. It's time to be real. Try it.
Hey, this week we're going to start a brand new series. We're calling it Be Real. Try it sometime. Be real. We're really talking about being authentic. Kevin, who leads our worship here, was telling me that there's actually a new social app, our phone app, called BeReal. And so I looked it up to see what it was all about. And because usually I'm thinking, oh, more social media. I don't need any more of that. But this is a little bit different. So what you do is you sign up, and once a day they give you a notification on your phone, and you're supposed to take a picture within 2 minutes of what you're doing or what's happening around in your life. So there's no opportunities, right, to filter the photos. There's no opportunity to edit the photos. It's like you just take it and you post it. And that's why they're calling it Be Real. How refreshing to be real on social media. And so it kind of connects with what we're talking about these next number of weeks. So we're going to be studying the book of the Bible that honestly most people probably will consider this book to be extreme. That's the truth. As we make our way through it, you may have a tendency that you'll want to shout out, Donald, that's so extreme. That's ridiculous. That's unrealistic. Nobody can live that way. That's not normal. The book that we're going to be studying is a book that it's one of the most practical books, down-to-earth books in all the Bible. It's not filled with heavy theology. It just kind of deals with how we ought to live our lives. It gives us basic instructions on how we can be a light to the world. It shows us how we can live so that we can actually take it to the streets where people are. And they can take notice and go, something's a little different. Something's not normal about that person. We're going to be walking through the book of James, and James is one of those small little books toward the end of our Bibles. It's only 5 chapters, 108 verses, but boy, it's going to pack a punch for sure. In fact, at times, the book will feel like, oh, it stings as we're making our way through it. The book is all about faith that actually works. And the author's going to lay out all of his cards right there on the table. And he's going to say, faith ought to be something more than what we just do on Sunday. And James is going to say, faith ought to be something that's real on a Monday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday and a Thursday and a Friday and a Saturday, not just on Sundays only. And you're going to notice that as we go through the book, James is going to deal far more with our walk and a lot less about our talk. It's more about our demonstration than it is our declaration. James is going to challenge people, or to challenge us to let people see our commitment and not just listen to our conversations. So with that, if you have your Bibles or some kind of electronic device, I'm going to invite you to turn to James, the book of James, which is at the latter part of the New Testament. And I thought there's no better place to start than at the beginning. So we're going to pick it up in James chapter 1 and verse 1. James 1:1. Anybody tracking with me? You okay? You found it? Hello? Okay. We got a problem, Houston. Okay, here we go. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes scattered among the nation. Now, it would be so easy for us just to read beyond that. And you might even say, come on, Donald, let's get to the meat of the book. How does this impact me in 2024? Let's just move along, Donald. But I actually think there's a little bit there for us. So we're going to camp out right there in verse 1 just for a few minutes. Because from this verse, we discover who the author is. And I think it is kind of weird, that the book is named after the author. It's kind of strange. Like if I wrote a book and I called it Donald, the Book of Donald. Like you would think I'm a little egotistical, wouldn't you, to name a book after yourself? But here he is, James identifies who he is, and he's writing to Jewish Christians who have been on the run because of persecution. He's writing to Christians who are trying to live out their life in a tumultuous world, in a chaotic world, in a compromising world, in a confusing world. Sounds a lot like our world that we're living in today. So who is James? Well, we discover that James is actually the half-brother of Jesus. So James and Jesus share something in common. They have the same mother, but they have a different father. James and Jesus would have grown up together. Maybe they shared a bedroom. I don't know. But I can only imagine what it would be like to be the younger brother of Jesus. Talk about not meeting expectations. I mean, can't you just imagine a Mary saying, James, come on, can't you just be like your older brother? Perfection? And I can even imagine maybe some animosity kind of growing inside of James's heart. When you take some time and study the life of James, you'll discover that for the most of his life, he is a doubter. He doesn't believe anything that Jesus says for most of his life. Like he grew up under the same roof, and a mom and a dad, and yet he comes out with a completely different conclusion as to who his brother is. In fact, in Mark chapter 3, verse 21, it says that his family went to where Jesus was teaching. And it says they wanted to take charge of him because they thought he was crazy. They wanted to institutionalize him. They thought what he was saying, claiming to be the Son of God, like that's ridiculous. And so it tells us his family went to get a hold of him because they didn't believe what he was saying. They thought he was out of his mind. And so James' story really begins how a lot of our story begins. It simply begins with doubt. I'm not sure that Jesus is who he says he is. I got questions. And that's where James' story starts. But it doesn't end there, because something changes in James. What's the change? Well, in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, we discover that Jesus goes and sees James after the resurrection. After the resurrection. So now everything that Jesus claimed before the resurrection, James is like, I don't believe any of that stuff. But something changed when all of a sudden his brother, who he saw die on a cross, is now alive again. Everything changed. At that point, all of his doubts, all of his questions, they begin to transition into faith. And don't you find it interesting that a man who for most of his life was a doubter writes a book about faith? I find that odd. Which is a reminder to me that God can use anyone. Maybe you need to be reminded of that today. God can use anyone. Things change for James when a mob of people come around James and tell him, you recant your belief that Jesus is the Son of God, and if you don't, we'll kill you. Now, when something's not real in someone's life, they don't lay down their life for it. And so he wouldn't recount, and so tradition tells us that they pushed him off the pinnacle of the temple. He fell to the ground, but it didn't kill him. And so it says a crowd went, and they began to stone him, and then began to beat him with sticks until he was dead. People don't end their life that way for something that's not true. And what's interesting, tradition, when you read some of the historians, it talks about James that he actually had camel knees because he spent so much time on his knees praying. They described him as a man with camel knees because he was always praying for the Jewish people that they would come to know Jesus. And he was praying for those who were persecuting him. And some traditions even say that he was praying while they were stoning him and beating him. So something changed in James. It was so obvious to anyone who all of a sudden was interacting with James after he saw Jesus with the resurrection. His life was no longer about himself, and people began to see the difference wherever he went. Now, I want you to remember that the book of James is not about perfection. It's about progress. You know, maybe you've seen that bumper sticker that says, Christians, just not perfect, just forgiven. We're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. So the Christian life is about a progress as we're moving along in our life. And it's about development. And as we're working through James, you're going to discover that sometimes he's very hard-hitting. Sometimes you feel like he's right in your face. This book is not complex at all. Every single person is going to understand every single word of what's happening. This is not hard to grasp. It's very easy. But by the time you get to week 3 and week 4, you may begin to say, I wish I didn't understand what James was trying to say. He's like, that's hard. That feels like it's in my face. And one of the things that James is going to show us is that there is a difference between being a Christian and being authentic. And that's why we've called this whole series, BeReal. Try it. I don't know, have you ever met maybe someone who claims to be a Christian, and not that we're the judge, but sometimes you observe their life and you listen and watch and you go, really? Huh. I wouldn't have pegged them as a Christian. Or maybe you met somebody who says, I'm a mechanic, and then you talk with them and you're like, they don't even know where the oil pan is. They must be watching YouTube videos because there's no way that they're a mechanic. Well, James wants to get to the bottom of the matter. So he's going to push us to the point where each one of us might say, stop it, James, stop. You're pushing too hard. I need a break from what you're saying in this book. So let me warn you, it's not always going to be easy to swallow. Because here's the part of our development that we wish God would do a little bit differently than the way he does things. So, I say this for your own benefit. I'm warning you now, as we make our way through the book of James, that it could get a little tough. Because what James is going to talk about is that first part of our spiritual maturity. And James is going to say something that's really weird. I'm going to let you know right now. It's weird, it's strange, and it's different than how you and I might think. In fact, when we get to reading this, you're going to think it's radical. Because it says in verse 2, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds. You know what my response is? Wow, what? What did you just say, James? Like, consider it all joy? That's crazy talk, James. At first, you might be thinking, how can we give this guy any credibility for we're talking that kind of nonsense? I mean, that's nonsense. Consider it all joy when you have many trials in your life. Are you saying, James, that when my little adorable puppy dog gets run over by a bus, we go, praise the Lord? Is that what you're trying to tell me, James? Because that's what it seems like it's saying. Is that what you mean? Like, oh, life is good. I just got fired from my dream job. Is that what you're saying, James? See, I don't think that's what he's saying at all. I think what James is telling us is we shouldn't look at trials in our life like they're intruders messing up our comfortable lifestyle. I think that's what he's trying to tell us. Remember, the people that he's writing to, right? He's writing to Christians who are on the run. I mean, because of persecution. These are desperate times for these believers in Jesus. And persecution is actually at an all-time high when he's writing this book. In fact, if you take time to go through the book of Acts, in Acts chapter 8, it talks about how they're literally going door to door, pound, 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 pound. And they're going to get rid of the Christians. And when they find one, they haul them out of their house. They have 2 options, or 3 options. You can recant, you'll go to prison, or we're going to kill you. And of course, the Apostle Paul, his previous life, he was Saul. Before he was conversion, he was the one that was pounding on the doors. He had his whole team So this is an all-time high, and that's why people have been running. It's kind of like the Holocaust in Nazi Germany when the Nazis were going door to door. They're gonna sniff out every Jew that they can find, and they're gonna haul them off to the Holocaust concentration camps. That's kind of what's happening right here. These are the group of people that James is writing to, and James knew exactly what to say in this letter that he wrote to these scattered Christians. He is not going to waste a word. Because the truth is, when you're in that situation, there is no doubt people are questioning, where is God? you know that's got to be on their mind. What is God doing? I give my life to Jesus, and now I'm on the run for my life. And so James knows who he's writing to, because he knows people are beginning to think, has God forgotten me and my family? Like, I want to be a fully devoted follower of Jesus, but since I made that decision, my life has been havoc. Like, what's up with that? Now, just for a minute, okay? I just want to pause for a second. Just for a minute. I want you to think about some events in your life. Moments in your past that have really defined you, that has really made the man or the woman that you are today. I mean, just kind of take a moment and look back at maybe some of the circumstances that have made you who you are today. When I did that, when I started looking back, I came to the conclusion that I am who I am not because of the easy times in my life. It was the tough ones. You know, those things that began really, really tough in your life. The things that I would never, ever, by the way, have chosen to go through. Honestly, if it was my choice, I would have avoided it altogether. Things that nobody wants to go through. And yet the truth is, those are the things that have shaped me and made me who I am today. So James gets right to the point. He just says, I'm James, I'm a servant of God, and I'm writing to those who are on the run. So let's get down to the business. And he jumps right into that. Consider it all joy, brothers, wherever you face trials of many kinds. You see, it doesn't matter how rich you are, or how talented you are, or how smart you are, or how famous you are. Everyone is going to have trials. Trials will come. Trials will come. You cannot avoid them. You can't get around them. They are inevitable. And that's what I love about the Bible, the honesty of the Bible. Trials will come. It doesn't say trials might come. It doesn't say, well, a few of you might experience a few trials in your life. No, it's just very honest, very blunt. They're coming. So be ready for them. That is the reality in which we live in today. Not if trials will come, but when they do come, James is saying, consider it joy. And so I'm just like, okay, James, I don't get this. Now, James says there are many. Mary says there are many kinds of trials. And some of the trials in our life will be very insignificant. But others will be very significant. Some will seem trivial, while others will seem life-altering. Some trials may be, your baby has been crying every single night, night after night after night, and you're getting no sleep, and you want to pull your hair out of your head. Maybe some trials may cost you some money. For instance, this past week, because of my own stupidity, I lost my phone. And someone has stolen it, and I don't know who it is. But no, I didn't lose it here in Hilsenberg. And so for a whole week, I have no phone, I don't have any contacts, I can't get into my bank, I can't get into my emails, I can't get on Facebook. And so I buy this new phone, I was like, Lord, why now? Why couldn't this have been a little bit down the road? Trials come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Trials can be being diagnosed with a cancer, but it also can be having the flu. A trial can be that your marriage is struggling to survive. A trial could be your dreams have been shattered. Maybe for you, the trial is singleness. And for you, that's hard. Or maybe it's the death of a child. That's why James, they come in all sizes and all shapes, the trials that we deal with. Some really seem very inconsequential, while others really do change the course of your life. And they're different for different people and different seasons of life. And what might seem very insignificant to you, honestly, may be very overwhelming for me. Because we're on this journey, but we're all at different mile markers. Like some of you, you're so far ahead of me. And there's others that are right there with me. And then there are a few that maybe are just a little bit behind me. Now I hope and pray that when I go through a trial, whatever that may be, that I would deal with it a lot differently than I would 10 years ago. I'm hoping that in this progress, not perfection, but in this progress, this journey that God has us on, that we're much different than what we were last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago in our spiritual development. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like my life has been like over the top blessed. I just feel like I've had this incredible life. But I would be completely dishonest with you if I said following Jesus is a bed of roses. Because there are times that it's really tough. And that's what I like about the Bible. It's just honest. It's upfront. It's real. It's not trying to tell you, following Jesus, your life's going to be perfect. No, the Bible doesn't paint some picture of utopia now that you made a decision to follow Jesus. It's real. It's honest. It's a straight shooter. The Bible is not going to paint some false narrative. So I love about the Bible, it doesn't sugarcoat it. The realness, the grittiness of God's word. And James says, yes, trials are coming. Okay? But let's be honest, it's that next part of the verse that really causes people to say, James, you've been taking way too much cold medicine. Like, what are you thinking to make that kind of comment? That's the part where you almost begin to think James could lose his audience. It says, trials will come, but he says, consider them pure joy. Consider trials pure joy. Okay, James, you lost me. By the way, I didn't hear anyone say amen when I made that comment. Come right from the Bible. No amens? Consider trials pure joy. James, I'm going to be honest, you're not making any sense at this point. I mean, you can imagine, you have a baby, and it's colic, and it's been colic for 3 months, and you're on your last nerve, and you're like, I wouldn't have it any other way. No, people don't talk that way, right? It's hard. So, James, how do you defend a statement like that? That trials will come, but listen, go ahead and consider it pure joy. Because let me tell you, these people are going through a trial. It could be the greatest trial of their life. That they are literally on the run. They're looking over their shoulders constantly. And James has the audacity to tell those people to consider this joy. I'm like, I'm not getting it. James, go ahead. Try to defend that statement. You want to say, James, this is 2024. People are going to consider you crazy with that kind of talk. I was recently told that trials are inevitable, but joy is a choice. Trials are inevitable. They're coming. But joy, well, that's a choice. I really think James is trying to tell us that even though you're in the storm of your life, you can still have peace. Even when it feels though your life is falling apart all around you. I think James is saying, you can have peace. You can have joy. I think really that's what separates so often the Christian versus the non-Christian. Because when we go through a hard time, we know there's actually purpose behind it. That God's doing something. We talk about this all the time. God is always working behind the scenes. We look at just circumstances and we're like, where is God? But then many of the studies we've done in the past years, we discover, oh, God's at work. It's just that he's working behind the scenes. And I think that's kind of what separates how the Christian thinks and the non-Christian. That's how we, in our culture. I also believe that when we go through trials, it's one of those most powerful opportunities actually to share about Christ. Your story and what you're dealing with. Because I think if we deal with it the way God we're instructed to deal with, I think it causes people to ask the question, what is with that guy? What does that girl have that I don't have? And then you have this opportunity to kind of just share the journey that you're on. Not that it's easy, but you have somebody that walks with you. But here's the problem. I don't want to cast any stones. But I think sometimes our culture doesn't see it. Because we can become the biggest complainers. Donald Calder can be a complainer. In fact, I was taking some time this last week and looking back at thinking all the things that I complained about. I'm like, oh, hugging my head in shame. I'm like, oh, I can't believe I complained about that. I usually don't complain to other people. It's all my grumbling's all inside. So you all think I'm perfect, but believe me, I'm not. And so I was just like, oh, Lord, why did I complain about that? What? And so sometimes I think it gets blurred. Maybe because we tend to be a complainer. We can be the best to walk through a trial, but we're not letting everybody know we're going through it. Right? And James is going to tell us why we should consider it pure joy. Because I certainly would like to know why I'm supposed to consider this joy, James. I just want to know what you're thinking. I just want to know why you think I should consider it joy. Like my heartache, my hurt, my frustrations, my betrayal. Why would I consider that joy? I would like to know what in the world you are talking about. Well, James goes on to explain. Let's look at verse 3. Because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Do you know what trials are? Trials are God's invitation to maturity. Trials are God's invitation to maturity. Now, we don't like to look at life that way. I don't like to look at life that way. We don't look at trials that way. If we looked at trials as God's invitation to develop us and to shape us and to mature us, that he's trying to create in something that we just don't have now. And I really do believe, because of some of the things that I've gone through in my past, it really has helped me to deal with some of the things that came along down the road, and it's really helped me in this stage of life. And if I hadn't gone through what this was back here, I don't really think I could have ever handled what was happening down here. And so it's this process that God is taking every one of those hard knocks at times and shaping us and molding us to be more like him so we can deal with the things that life kind of throws our way, that we can be a better disciple. Because the truth is, I don't like this plan, by the way, but the truth is, most of the moments that have made me what I am today is because of a trial in my life. How many of us are better because we went through a trial, even though we would have never chosen that? Perhaps your perspective of life changes because you went through a trial. Perhaps you see people differently because you went through something. Perhaps your compassion is more available because you went through something. All because God invited you to mature in your faith through trials. But you know what else trials does? Trials are a great reminder of our need for God. Can you identify? Like, are you tracking with me on that? Like, do you get that? It helps us understand our need for God. That there's those times when we become so desperate. But the truth is that when life is going well, we have this sense that we need God less. Oh my goodness, we'd never say that from the pulpit, but our lives kind of declare that to be true. Well, life's going good. I'll just mosey on along down here. I'm firing on all the cylinders of life. Lord, I don't need you today. I don't need you this week, or I might not even need you this month. It's going so good. It just seems to be our natural tendency. I don't necessarily want to live that way. I'm just saying that's how I lean towards. Like, I'm like many of you. As a little child, I memorized that verse, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your path. So why is it that we have this tendency to lean on our own understanding? When we're told, don't do that, trust the Lord. But when life's going good, we can trust in our own stuff, our own resources, which is kind of the very opposite of what we've been told to do. Trust in the Lord. And I know that verse very well, and I've memorized that. I've had that memorized probably for 50 years, and I'm still struggling with it. To not to lean on my own understanding. Sometimes we lean away from God simply because life is so good. And I don't know every reason that God allows us to go through trials. I don't. But sometimes I think it's just to remind us we need God. I think that's the truth. A reminder that we are in need of God's grace every single day. See, we were never created to be independent, to live our lives independently. We were actually created to be fully dependent upon God. And I also think that when we go through trials, I don't know about you, but my experience has been that it really ups my game, increases my prayer life. Nothing like going to God when your life is desperate, when you are broken, when you have nothing to lean on. When you feel like the carpet has been pulled from out underneath your feet. It seems in those times we are reminded, who are we ever desperate that we need God and his grace. Now, maybe you're here this morning and you feel like your life is falling apart. I wouldn't even know, because you know what? Church is so good. We're professionals, actors sometimes, right? We come in, we got a smile on our face. I've had people ask me, "Hey, how you doing, Donald?" I'm like, "Doing great." And I think to myself, "Boy, you're a liar." Because it's not really so great. I'm kind of going through something, but right? We come to church, whatever the note. Good, life is so good. So your body language may not express to me that you're going through something hard. Maybe that you may feel like it's falling apart. And maybe it's just a reminder to you, to all of us, that we're just desperate for God. We need him. Maybe this morning God's using that trial in your life so you would look to him to be your resource. It's possible that you're here this morning and what I'm talking about just seems way too foreign. Like, what are you, like this stuff, I don't get this. And maybe because you don't know Jesus in a real way. Like, in a real way. You've never experienced what it is to have your sins forgiven. You've never known what it is to have the weight of the sin off of your shoulders. So I want you to know that's why Jesus went to the cross. For you. For you. Like, it's hard to get our minds wrapped around this, that God would actually go and die on a cross if we were the only person on earth, so that we could have that relationship with him. He did it for you. He didn't want you to carry the burden all on your own. He didn't want you to carry the load all by yourself. And so he offers you a new life, not a better life, a new life. A life where he becomes your strength in times like these. The Bible says if you simply call on him, call on the name of the Lord, he says he hears you. He hears you. And he'll save you from your sins. Let's pray. Father, I never want to stand up here and ever proclaim that I got this all figured out. I'm so glad that there are people on this journey with me. I'm thankful for those who are ahead of me that set an example. I'm so glad that I can be on this journey with people that we're all in the same mile marker. And I pray, God, that for those who are behind us, that they can see something different in us as well. Now, Lord, we've never been called to perfection. There's only one that has perfection, that's you. But Lord, you have told us we're a work in progress. And so, Lord, you allow these tough times to come in our life, not things that we'd ever desire or want or ever invite. But God, I'm grateful to know that when they do, it's because you're up to something. You are shaping us. You are molding us to be a little bit more like you than we were yesterday and last year and 5 years ago. So I'm thankful, Lord, that you are interested in all of our development each and every day of our lives. Thank you for this letter. Though it was written to Christians a couple thousand years ago who were really struggling with life and having all those difficult questions as to where God is, this book is so relevant for exactly where we are today in 2024. So Lord, over the next number of weeks as we kind of make our way through, as we journey through this book, I pray, God, that you'd open our eyes to see what you're doing in our lives. We invite you to shape us and mold us to be more like you, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.